Coming up on today's Locked On Mavs, in the spirit of board bets and predictions for the upcoming season, what's the hardest thing to predict about the Mavericks for the 2024-25 season? On today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm here because I have to be here.
Dallas is going to get a seat at the table.
That's it. It's me versus the machine. Don't let his whiteness take away from his quickness.
You can rest later. You're young.
I'm going to recover here.
Wait. One more thing. Yeah. Let's go. It's a one more thing. It's an extra show on the weekend. It's not the weekend. During the week, you are locked on the Dallas Mavericks. I'm one of your hosts, Isaac Harris, formerly of the Dallas Mavericks and longtime co-host of this show. This Locked On Mavericks daily podcast that's on YouTube, wherever you listen to audio platforms. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you. Like, subscribe to the show. If you haven't subbed already, gosh, we have 30-something thousand people that subbed to this show. Can't thank you enough for that. Like the show. It helps us. Comment something below. Comment anything below on this show. But answer this question. Here's the question I'm going to answer today. What's the hardest thing to predict about the Mavericks season? Because we're doing all these board bets. We're doing this week on the show. We've done the Google form that hopefully if you're listening to this, you filled out the Google form too, where we put all these board bets in this document. Wanted you guys to vote on that. And then on Friday's show, Nick and myself are going to go through some of these results, see where we differ from some of you guys, maybe some surprises from some of your votes and all of that. But so in the spirit of all these board bets, predicting things about the season, I wanted to kind of do this like one more thing. So if you're unfamiliar with one more things, these are kind of bonus extra shows. They're not a full 30 minutes. So it's just kind of like some extra content that we have. It's kind of like this one more thing that we don't get to on a regular show. So what's the hardest thing to predict for this upcoming season? And, Nick made some board bets. I made some board bets, and then we can combine some of our notes. But in those notes, you don't really find the things I left out because I'm like the things I wrestle with the most. I'm like, I can't put a board bet on that because I'm unsure about what this is going to be or how it's going to turn out. So I want to do 3 of those things today. 3 things that are the hardest things to predict about the Mavericks. But first, I just want to say this. Woj bombs. It was a sad notification getting on my phone today. If you've not seen it, Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN has retired. He retired. And this is something that so many of us trying to explain to like a non-sports person, the impact that Woj has had doing his job and like rising up to the level that Woj has been at. It's really hard to do, but hopefully I think it would be a very interesting 30 for 30 one day of Woj's life and the life of like an insider like that. He's broke so many news, the Woj bomb of Twitter notifications and popping up on your phone like, whoa, is that real? Like, it's sad as a selfish person who's enjoyed all those. I've enjoyed those, but for the human side, I'm excited for this guy because this guy can finally like maybe put down his phone and enjoy his new job with the Bonnies and just his loyalty and stuff to those guys up there. So anyway, hats off to Woj, just a true legend in that industry. Somebody who's been at the pinnacle top of that industry for such a long time. And we get to see who's next, who's going to carry that for ESPN and be the newsbreaker. And all of that, even though we have the Tim McMahons and Zach Lowe's and of the world at ESPN, we'll see what they have up their sleeve with that. So wanted to say that real quick. Hats off to Woj. And thanks for all the Woj bombs over the years. First thing that I think is hard to predict about this upcoming season for the Mavericks is the guard rotation off the bench. If you can say right now, and you're like, no, Isaac, I know what's going to like the rotation off the bench. I know Dinwiddie's getting 25 minutes a night as the 6th man. He is our Jason Terry. Then I'm going to call bullcrap because I don't think anybody knows it right now. And this is something we just have to like kind of wait on, right? Like I want to see how this shakes out. So exiting the Mavericks rotation, guard rotation, we want to say that. You're looking at Tim Hardaway Jr. leaving. You're looking at Josh Green leaving. Then you have some combination of Quentin Grimes, Spencer Dinwiddie, Dante Exum, and Jaden Hardy. And I want to put Josh and Grimes in there, even though I think they're kind of similar, just because I think these are the backup guards for the Mavericks outside of Luka and Kyrie. We know that they're going to play a lot. We know that Klay Thompson's going to play and is going to start. So then you look at these four guys, Grimes, Dinwiddie, Exum, and Hardy, and you're like, who's going to get the most minutes? How is this going to shake out? Is one of these guys going to be a DMPCD at the beginning and just kind of like out of the rotation? Are all of these guys going to play consistently? You look at a guy like Dante Exum last year, played in 55 games. In those 55 games, played 20 minutes a game. I mean, we remember some big-time Dante moments. You look at Jaden Hardy, and it was like, what's Jaden Hardy's role in this team? He only averaged like 13 minutes a game for this team last year. But you're like, all right, he's got a contract decision coming up. What are they going to do with him? Like, is he taking a step? Do we think he's taking a step? Now Tim Hardaway's gone off the bench, and Tim, he only started 12 games last year, 13 games as far as Tim Hardaway last year. So it's like, do you expect Spencer Dinwiddie to just step into the Tim Hardaway Jr. role and be like the quote unquote sixth man and get all of the Tim Hardaway Jr. minutes, which Tim got over 20 minutes a game, pretty locked into that sixth man spot? I don't know if it's really that. Is that Quentin Grimes? Is Quentin Grimes the Josh Green minutes? And then you're looking at how they're splitting up Tim's minutes between Dinwiddie, Exum, Hardy. Would it shock you if a Dante Exum played more minutes per game next year than Spencer Dinwiddie? And what Spencer Dinwiddie are we getting? I'm pretty confident of like, hey, I think he's going to look better in Dallas this season compared to last year in Los Angeles. You start breaking down some of his numbers, the percentage of his offensive possessions last year in those 28 games in LA compared to the games that he played in Dallas with Brunson and Luka as this third ball handler, and them asking him to be a ball handler, be a creator, come off the pick and roll, run the pick and roll. And you look at the percentage of his offensive possessions in LA in those 28 games and how much of them were spot up shots, and them not asking him to do what he's good at doing. That's why I'm really encouraged. I think going back to Dallas, kind of empowering him to do what he's best at is something that I think will help unlock Dinwiddie again. Will he be the same Dinwiddie that we had a few years ago? I don't know. And this is why I put this in this category. I don't know the rotation for the guards off the bench. I think this is one of the hardest things to predict. And then you look at even like a Derrick Jones Jr. compared to like a Klay Thompson, who you think that those two guys will swap spots in the starting lineup. Derrick Jones Jr. only averaged 23 minutes a game. Is Klay just going to average 23 minutes a game? If he averages more, then that means maybe some minutes go away from one of these guys. So I'm fascinated to see in preseason, first game, first few games of the regular season, you're looking at that Spurs game, you're looking at, that Minnesota game, and you're like, all right, who are the first guards that's going to be off the bench? Does Dante Exum get up first? Is it a, Spencer Dinwiddie? If I had to predict, I think out of these four guys, I think Hardy's kind of the odd man out. I think Exum gets the lower amount of minutes, and I think Quentin Grimes and Dinwiddie gets the higher amount of minutes. I think we could see Grimes gets a lot of the Josh Green minutes. I think Dinwiddie gets a good chunk of the Tim Hardaway Jr. minutes, but Exum is kind of like alternating with Dinwiddie. Dinwiddie gets more minutes, but Exum gets a small chunk of the 10 minutes too, with Hardy kind of situational, injury-based. Let's see what it looks like. That's my prediction. Could be wrong. Could be right. I don't know. But you know what? Let's take a quick break, and then we'll be back with some more content.
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
So look at that ad break there. This podcast is brought to you by Game Time. Guys, the Baltimore Ravens, my heart, my favorite team in NFL, is in Dallas this weekend playing the Dallas Cowboys, and boy, both teams need to win. But, I'm trying to find some tickets to the game. I would love to go to the game. I feel like I have to go to the game. I live really close to the game. And I'm like, how do I get tickets? This is where Game Time comes into play. And you know what? Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Is this speaking to me? Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste any time searching through thousands of tickets. That I don't want to do that. So please help me out here. Yes. What else do they have here? They have an app. It features it. You can customize your spot, supplemental as inspirational. It features different things like curated deals to make it easier for you to find the best price. It has a super deal. Seats. You can view the seats before you buy them, and a lowest price guarantee. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. What time is it? Game time. This podcast is also brought to you by FanDuel. The other day I talked about some odds and stuff for the Mavericks this season. Guess who's the favorite to win the MVP this season right now? It's Luka Doncic. Your favorite on FanDuel to win the MVP. You can go down the line, look at Mavericks win total, which we talked about the board bet the other day at 49.5. You could do that on FanDuel. FanDuel is the America's #1 sports book. We have something different, a little different for you. We got a little something to help you out here. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday ticket for YouTube and YouTube TV. I had this last year. Love it. It is awesome. Sunday ticket on YouTube TV. Then with YouTube TV base playing, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. Just visit FanDuel.com, download America's #1 sports book. That's FanDuel.com.
Shut it down! Oh, let's go home!
Oh, I tried to play the music. Oh, wait, here we go. Yeah, baby! Look at that! Look at that! Look at that! Oh, the music just, gosh, it plays over and over again. All right. That was so smooth. That was like our smoothest ad break yet. Get off me. Don't tell Nick. Don't tell Nick. I want to tell Nick. Don't leave a comment telling Nick. So then he just doesn't see it. All right, let's talk about the next thing. Next thing. That's the hardest thing to predict about the Mavericks going into next season. I'm fascinated by the PJ Washington spot in the starting lineup. Can he be? I wrote this down. Can PJ Washington be Shawn Marion? If you're a Mavericks fan that goes back to 2011, you know that they win the title in 2011. You look at the breakdown of this roster. You look at a Dirk Nowitzki. You look at Jason Terry. You look at some of these guys like a Caron Butler before he gets hurt. You look at Shawn Marion. You have the JJ Bareas. You have this grizzled vet. I'll say grizzled maybe. And Jason Kidd running point guard. Peja. You just, I mean, we could go all day. Brendan Haywood. Like, I feel like I just got to go through the roster. But one of the key parts of that, when you think of 2011, you'll think of Dirk Nowitzki, obviously. You think of Jason Terry and those big moments. You think of JJ Barea just embarrassing and shutting down LeBron on the biggest stage possible. That's your king. So somebody, I think, gosh, what about Stevenson? All right. Deshaun Stevenson's shirt post parade. Or okay. Anyway, I feel like Shawn Marion gets overlooked a little bit with that title team because he does all the dirty work. He guards some of the best players on the opposing team. He's just doing all the in-between stuff. So guys like Dirk, guys like Jet, can torch and get their buckets. And you look at, it's not one for one. You can't sit here and do like this player is this player, this player, this player. But you look at this Mavericks team and you got a Luka Doncic, you have a Kyrie Irving. Those guys are going to get buckets. Now you're even adding a Klay Thompson to that. Then you have a Derek Lively in that's going to get his oops going to the basket. That's going to get his little short roll stuff. That might get a jump hook every now and then. What if he's a stretch five at some point and getting some threes up? Where does PJ Washington's points come into play? Like we ended last season with Nico Harrison saying this is pre-Klay and all of that of like, hey, we're going to need him to score a little bit more points because they kind of needed that third guy to score. we're not even talking about them adding Dinwiddie this offseason too, a scorer. So I think at times, and I think overall, that they're going to need PJ Washington to be more of a Sean Marion compared to, or more than a third scorer on the team, because I think that's going to be Klay Thompson's role. And then after that, I think you're still going to have some PJ, some PJ games and some PJ points. Seems kind of weird to say, but and then a Derek Lively and a Dinwiddie scoring points and all of that. But can PJ Washington embrace? Do I want to say embrace? Can he embrace that I'm going to do the dirty work? I'm going to up my defense and get better defensively because I'm going to have to guard some of these opposing best guys on the other team. I'm going to have to work my butt off, and maybe I don't get a ton of shots a game, but I got to be that guy for this team. Does he have it in him? Can he do that? I think that's something hard to predict because he's also super young in his career. You don't blame the guy, a guy who scored 40-something points in a game, 44 points, who's had some big games in Charlotte, that comes over and you think about some of these these games in the playoffs last year to where he's, standing on business and flame throwing with all these 3-pointers and different stuff. And you wanting to do more off the dribble at times. So to look at a guy like that and say like, hey, we know this is where you're at right now. And we know you probably want to do more of that, but can you be kind of a dirty work guy and then hit some open threes? So I'm curious about that. You can't just go by I thought some of the points per game stuff or just some of the normal, I don't know what, bland numbers, if we want to say that. You look at Sean Marion in 2011 season, averaged 28 minutes a game, started obviously, 12 points, 7 boards. And it kind of surprised me a little bit because I kind of expected PJ to be a little bit more. I look at PJ Washington last season, 32 minutes a game, starts a lot. And after the trade, obviously, 12 points, 6 rebounds. It's like, okay, the averages are kind of there, but can he embrace that role? I think it's super important for this team, and it's one of the harder things to predict for next season. Lastly, the biggest thing, which Klay Thompson are they getting? I think this is probably one of the it is one of the hardest things to predict about the season for the Mavs. I think everybody has their opinion on it, right? Nick talks to a guy from the Warriors the other day, and it's just like Klay's cooked. Klay's all this, all this, and it's like, hey, most of you are probably listening right now and say, yeah, well, that's a Warriors guy. You talk to some other people like around. I remember some of the discourse last year around the league about Klay and how his defense has slipped, how his athleticism had slipped some. And he could still shoot the lights out, but like he just wasn't the same player after these huge injuries. And you don't blame him, right? Like you kind of get it. So you look at Klay and you're like, well, which Klay are they getting? And I kind of like, it's hard to predict it. You can be positive. I'm super positive. If you know anything about my opinions post Klay trade or signing and all that, like I am all in on the Klay Thompson addition in Dallas. I think he's going to be awesome in Dallas. I think it's going to open up a lot of stuff and space, and he's going to hit 1,000,000 threes and all this stuff. But is Klay Thompson going to be, hey, stand in the corner? I mean, I laughed the other day, 2 days ago, Nick brought up Doug McDermott shooting 50% from 3. And I'm like, yeah, I want him to be more than Doug McDermott for this Mavericks team next year. Is he going to be Doug McDermott, or is he going to be closer to what Klay was, a handful of years ago? There are 2 things that I'm pretty dang certain with Klay Thompson in Dallas next year. I am pretty certain that he's going to start a lot of basketball games if he's healthy. I think he's going to start a ton. I think if he is healthy, he's starting games. And I'm pretty dang certain that he's going to make a bunch of open shots. Those 2 things right there, it's non-negotiable for me. I think those 2 things are certain. What's up in the air for me is what kind of defense are we getting? What kind of off-ball movement are we getting? What type of creation are we getting? What are the Mavs getting with that type of Klay Thompson? And I also want to temper some of the expectations because also look at his contract. I'm going to list to you some of the people that I think it's worth remembering that when we're talking about Klay Thompson for next year, we're not talking about $40 million Klay Thompson. And this is where we have to realize, and it's okay as Mavericks fans to say, Klay's not the same Klay as he was before the injuries. It's okay. The Warriors know that. This is why he's not really a Warrior. Like, they talked about contract negotiation and all this stuff. And we're talking about a guy who went from $40 million down to making $15.8 million next year for the Mavericks. I think sometimes when we have the discourse about Klay Thompson for next season, we're talking about him like a $40 million player of like, dude, like we're getting Klay Thompson, the title Klay Thompson, who can do all these different things. And it's like we're either overshooting it or we're really undershooting it and be like, dude, some people are out there like, dude, he's cooked. He can't do it. All this. I'm like, dude, he's making $15.8 million. You know who makes more than Klay Thompson next year in annual salary? Tim Hardaway Jr. You know what the Mavericks got from Tim Hardaway Jr. last year? Let's move on. These are some other guys that make more money than Klay Thompson next year. Karis LeVert, Zach Collins, Kevin Huerter, Rui Hachimura, Malik Monk, Pat Williams, Nurkic, Josh Hart. Like, these are some good guys. A lot of these guys are starting for their team. Right underneath Klay Thompson, we're talking about making 15.5 or 15.6 million compared to Klay's 15.8. Grayson Allen, Avdia, PJ Washington, Max Strus. Shout out to Jen from The Bachelorette taking the shot. Isaiah Stewart, Dorian Finney-Smith, Mitchell Robinson. Like, these are the guys that he's getting paid around. So let's have that conversation when we have expectations for next year. This is why I'm all in on Klay Thompson being in Dallas next year. And I'm all in knowing that he's not going to be the same Klay as he was before the injuries. So, but what Klay are we exactly getting? That's what it's so hard to predict, right? Like, you even look at last season and how people talk about Klay last year, and it's like, he didn't really have that bad of a season. But then you talk to some Warriors people or people who watch him a lot, or you go back to see some of the reporting and stuff from last year, and it wasn't as kind to Klay and just how some things ended there. And yeah, his play and just different stuff, but how much of that was a situation, all of that. So I just think it's really hard to predict. It's really hard to predict. You could tell me Klay Thompson comes out this season and he's more of a standstill shooter. He tries some of these other extra things, but you can tell it's just, hey, the injuries have taken a toll, but he still hits a million shots. He still starts a lot of games, plays a lot of minutes, and super efficient and can just get buckets. You could also tell me that Klay Thompson is as motivated as ever. Last season, you know, how all of that ended just took a big toll on him. And we see a different side of him when it comes to lateral defense. We see a little bit more pep in his step on defense. He's creating a little bit more and all that. If we see that side of him, wouldn't be shocked either. This is where it's hard to predict which Klay we're getting next year, but we are getting an NBA champion and one of the best shooters of all time. And I'm super excited to watch him play basketball. So those are the three things that I think are the hardest things to predict about the Mavericks next season. Stay tuned. There's a show today, a regular episode between Nick and the Slightly Biased. And then coming up on Friday, Nick and I will be back with a regular show talking about more board bets, where we stand, where the fans stood on that, and everything else. Guys, that's one more thing. Thanks for listening. Peace out. Boom. Where's the outro track? Where's the outro track? Here we go. And there's no music with the outro track, baby, because this is how we make things with no music.